A very warm welcome to today's edition of our learning tutorial. I'm Kwachi Jonathan Boache, JK of JK Clothing. Today we're going to learn how to draft the basic bodice for the female. We are drafting the front, the back, and the sleeve. After we're done with that, we would also use this to sew this very simple style you see here. We have done this basic bodice in tree before, but then our friends in the diaspora do not have the opportunity of watching and understanding. That is the main reason why we've done this today. If you'd want to learn how to do this, do stick and stay. Let's do this together. Okay, so in drafting your basic sleeves, in this instance, the cap sleeve, you need some measurements from the dress for which you are doing the sleeve. And so this is the back, this is the front pattern of our main bodice. And in that, the front armhole gives us 9.5, and the back armhole gives us 9 inches. When we add the two, we get 18.5. With this 18.5, we divide it by 2, and then we get 9.25. So the 9.25 would be our armhole. The next one has to do with the arm depth. So the arm depth for both the front and the back was 7 inches in this instance. So the 7 inches plus the seam allowance. The seam allowance for this pattern is also 1 inch. So the 7 plus the 1 is going to give us the arm depth. And so to start with, we would need the arm depth plus the seam allowance, which is 7 plus 1, in order to fold our fabric. That is if we're using our fabric. In using this pattern, that will be the first two measurements we would need. And so this is it, 8 inches. The next thing would be to measure the sleeve length. Our sleeve length is 22. So we added quarter to the dress pattern, and so we add quarter to the sleeve as well. And so it becomes 22.25. The next step would be to enter the inseam. And so with the sleeve, we have the inseam, we have the outseam. The outseam is the top part which joins the shoulder all the way to the wrist. And the inseam is joining where the armpit is all the way to the sleeve. And so the difference between the outseam and the inseam is 6 inches, it's 5 inches. And so we'd mark the 5 inches here. After marking this 5 inches, where the 5 inches and the 8 inches we marked earlier meet, we would move from that point, and then we measure 7 inches from the top here towards that point we had marked earlier. And so with this, we have to draw a line in an S form, which will start from here all the way to where the 7 inches, got to. We'll then draw a line from here. First, it will go in a convex form, then coming in downwards, will turn into a concave shape. And from here, okay, so once we are done with this, and to be able to confirm whether it is correct or not, we would first have to measure all along to see if what figure we get is about half of an inch bigger than the front and then the back armhole that we marked, that we measured initially. So when we measure this, we get 10 and quarter. 10 and quarter, the front and the back armhole give us 18 and half. We divided that into two, and then we had 9 and quarter. And so when we have 10 and quarter, it means we are getting like 1 inch higher than the two, which is very good for us. And so we'll maintain this. If this were supposed to be longer than what we wanted, it means instead of the 5 inches we marked initially, we would rather come back and then we'll do another marking. The more you come towards the sleeve cap, the more you come backwards, the lesser this length would be. And the farther you go deeper into the inseam, the higher this figure would also be. And so measuring this and then we having the 10 and a half means we have 1 inch higher than the front and then the back armhole combined together divided by 2. So with this, we are good to go. We'll then square the tip. This is where the wrist would be. We'll then square it off. And then the wrist. The wrist of this client is 8 inches. And so we'll mark the 8 inches plus 1 inch seam allowance. This is the 1 inch. And then we join these 2 points together. But before we do that, we first would have to know our bicep measurement. With a bicep, you'd measure about 7 inches from the apex of the cap. You measure about 7 inches. And at 7 inches, you then measure your bicep measurement. The bicep was 13, which is 6.5 when divided by 2. And then we add a 1 inch seam allowance to it. We can then join a line from this point to that point, all the way heading towards the wrist plus the seam allowance we have at the tip here. And so this is our sleeve. Bear in mind, this is just one layer. And so if we are to take this to cut our fabric, it means we'll fold it into two, and this will be the folded line. So this is where our fold will be. This is where the wrist is, and this is the cuff. And this would be the bicep. This would be the bicep. So this is how we draft our basic sleeve after we have drafted our front and back. So we'll go ahead and then cut the sleeve. So this would be it for our basic bodice, the front, the back, and the sleeve. Thank you so much for watching. You can click on the links up there to see how we drafted our basic bodice and how we would also sew it. Thank you.